All right, so get ready, folks, because we're about to dive deep, deep into the world of a thinker you might not know, but absolutely should.
Yeah.
Xenophanes. We're talking ancient Greece,
Mm.
a time of gods and heroes,
Right?
and some seriously mind-blowing philosophy. Xenophanes was a philosopher-poet living around the 6th and 5th centuries BCE.
Uh-huh.
And trust me, his ideas were way ahead of their time.
What's really captivating about Xenophanes is that he's often seen as a bridge between that traditional world of myths and the emerging new science of his era.
Yeah.
He dared to question, well, pretty much everything, especially the established views on the gods.
So instead of just accepting all the stories everyone was telling, he was
Right.
like, hold on, let's think this through.
Exactly.
But before we get to all the mind-blowing stuff, set the stage for us.
Okay.
Who was this guy?
Well, our sources tell us that he was born in Colophon,
Okay.
a city in Ionia.
Hmm.
But here's the interesting part. Xenophanes didn't just stay put. He traveled extensively throughout the Greek world,
Oh,
possibly even living in Italy and Sicily.
really?
This constant movement suggests a restless intellect, someone driven by a thirst for knowledge and new experiences.
Yeah.
He wasn't just reading scrolls in some dusty library.
Yeah.
He was out there engaging with the world.
That's a great point. It's like he understood that real wisdom comes from experiencing different cultures,
Right.
hearing different perspectives, right?
Absolutely.
You don't challenge the status quo by just sitting in your comfort zone.
Exactly. And it wasn't just travel that shaped his thinking.
Right.
Xenophanes was a prolific poet, composing in various styles,
Oh.
including some pretty sharp critiques of Homer and Hesiod,
Oh.
the rock stars of Greek poetry at the time.
Wow, taking on those giants. That's bold.
Yeah.
But what exactly was he criticizing? Was it their writing style
Right.
or something deeper?
It goes much, much deeper than style.
Okay.
Xenophanes was taking aim at the very ideas these poems present, especially their portrayal of the gods.
Right.
He found it absurd that these supposedly divine beings were depicted as behaving like, well, flawed humans, stealing, cheating,
Yeah.
engaging in petty squabbles.
Right.
He was basically saying, is this really the best we can imagine for the divine?
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
It'd be like basing your whole understanding of spirituality on, I don't know, the most dramatic,
Right.
dysfunctional reality TV show out there.
Exactly.
Not exactly inspiring, is it?
Not at all. And Xenophanes drove this point home with a brilliant satirical touch.
Oh, interesting.
He mocked the way different cultures imagined their gods looking just like them.
Okay.
Ethiopians with snub noses, Thracians with blue eyes.
Interesting.
It's a subtle but powerful attack on anthropomorphism,
Okay.
attributing human characteristics to what's supposed to be beyond human.
So he's not just saying these stories are silly.
Right.
He's pointing out a fundamental flaw in how people were thinking about the divine.
Exactly.
They were creating gods in their own image.
Yes.
Rather than conceiving of something truly transcendent.
Right.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
It is.
I mean, huge.
And this is why Xenophanes is so important.
Yeah.
He wasn't just playing word games or
Mm.
trying to be edgy.
Yeah.
He was challenging the very foundations of how people understood their world and
Yeah.
their place in it.
Mm.
He was pushing them towards a more reasoned, critical view of the divine.
Okay, so he's dismantling this popular view of the gods.
Right.
But was he offering an alternative?
Good question.
Wasn't there something about him hinting at a very different idea of God?
Uh-huh.
Something closer to monotheism?
That's a question that has puzzled scholars for centuries.
I bet.
Xenophanes does speak of a one greatest God,
Mm.
a being, unlike mortals, incredibly powerful,
Right.
who can shake all things by the thought of his mind.
Whoa, that's a powerful image.
It is.
It suggests a God who's not just a bigger, stronger version of us,
Right.
but something entirely different. Something that operates on a cosmic scale.
Indeed.
Yeah.
However, there are also references to gods in the plural in his work.
Oh, okay.
So the monotheism interpretation is, it's tricky.
Right.
It's more likely that Xenophanes was emphasizing the supremacy of one God,
Okay.
the greatest God, not necessarily denying the existence of others.
So maybe it's not full-blown monotheism,
Right.
but it's definitely a move away from that pantheon of squabbling all-too-human gods.
Exactly.
He's pushing towards a more unified, awe-inspiring concept of the divine.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how he walks this line, leaving us to ponder the possibilities.
And it's important to remember that Xenophanes' interests weren't limited to just the divine.
Right.
He was also deeply interested in the natural world,
Okay.
what we might call the scientific aspects of reality.
Oh, right. He wasn't just a philosopher and theologian.
Right.
He was also a proto-scientist, right?
Yes.
Didn't he have some theories about the Earth and the cosmos?
He did,
Go
and
ahead.
some of them were quite,
Yeah. Unconventional for his time.
All right, I'm hooked. Tell me more about Xenophanes the scientist. What kind of observations was he making?
Okay.
What kind of conclusions was he drawing?
Well, one of the things that really sets Xenophanes apart is his use of empirical evidence.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't just, like, speculating about the nature of reality.
Right.
He was looking for clues in the world around him.
Mm.
For example, he was very intrigued by the discovery of fossilized sea creatures
Okay.
in places far from the ocean.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
It's like he was piecing together the history of the Earth layer by layer
Right?
based on, like, the clues that nature provided.
Exactly.
He was doing paleontology before paleontology was even a thing.
Exactly. Based on these fossils, Xenophanes theorized about these alternating periods of worldwide flood and drought.
Okay.
He was trying to explain how those sea creatures ended up so far inland, and his explanation, well, it shows an early scientific mind at work.
Right.
He was drawing conclusions based on observation and reasoning, rather than just accepting traditional myths.
That's a key element of scientific thinking, right?
Yes.
Looking for evidence, forming hypotheses. It's amazing to see that kind of thinking so far back in history.
It is.
But didn't he also have some more, let's say, unconventional ideas about the Earth and the cosmos?
Unconventional is definitely a good word for it.
Okay.
He proposed that the Earth was flat
Okay.
and extended infinitely in all directions.
Hold on, a flat Earth. I thought that idea was debunked centuries ago. How could someone who is so sharp about the gods be so off base about the shape of the Earth?
It's important to remember the context.
Yeah.
Xenophanes didn't have access to the tools and technologies
Yeah.
that later allowed us to determine the Earth's true shape.
Right.
He was working with what he could observe, and to him, a flat Earth seemed like the most logical explanation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even the greatest thinkers are limited by the knowledge and technology of their time.
Exactly.
But okay, what about the cosmos?
What were his ideas about the sun, moon, and stars?
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Xenophanes believed that the sun, moon, and stars were all formed from clouds. He envisioned this process where fiery clouds ignited, giving birth to these celestial bodies.
Wait, fiery clouds, like clouds on fire. That sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It might sound strange to us,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that Xenophanes was trying to explain the cosmos without the benefit of modern astronomy.
Right.
He was looking for patterns, trying to make sense of the movements of these heavenly bodies,
Right.
based on what he could see with his own eyes.
So he's observing these patterns in the sky,
Right.
and he's trying to find a way to explain them
Yes.
using what he knows about the natural world, clouds, with their constant change in movement.
Right.
Seemed like a plausible explanation.
Exactly.
I mean, at the time.
And it's not just the clouds themselves that were important to Xenophanes, but also the processes of change and transformation they undergo.
Right.
He saw the world as this dynamic, interconnected system, with clouds playing the central role in mediating between the various elements and forces at play.
Okay.
Remember, he was living in a time when the scientific study of nature was still in its infancy.
Yeah.
He was trying to develop a comprehensive understanding of the cosmos using the limited tools and knowledge available to him.
Okay, that helps to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
It's easy to judge past ideas based on what we know now,
Right?
but it's important to remember the context they were working in.
Absolutely.
It's like trying to build a smartphone
Right.
with the tools and materials available in ancient Greece.
Precisely. But let's not get too caught up in the specifics of his cosmological theories.
Oh.
What's more important is Xenophanes' overall approach. His willingness to question traditional explanations, to seek naturalistic explanations for phenomena that were often attributed to supernatural forces.
So even if his specific theories weren't always accurate,
Right.
his way of thinking,
Yes.
his scientific curiosity, was groundbreaking for his time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He helped lay the groundwork for the scientific revolution that would come centuries later.
Speaking of groundbreaking thinking, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
Xenophanes' critique of society.
Right.
He wasn't just challenging the gods.
Yeah.
He has some pretty sharp things to say about human behavior, too, right?
Right.
Okay.
Xenophanes was deeply critical of the values and priorities of his society.
Hmm.
He saw a lot of emphasis on superficial things like wealth, status, and physical prowess.
Yeah.
And he felt that true excellence lay elsewhere.
So he was a bit of a social reformer as well,
Yes,
like a philosopher, poet, scientist, and a critic of the establishment.
that's right.
This guy was busy.
He certainly was.
Wow.
And his criticisms were aimed at some pretty deeply ingrained beliefs.
Okay.
For example, he was very critical of the way athletes were glorified in his time.
Mm.
You know, winning a foot race wasn't exactly the highest form of achievement in his book.
It's interesting because we still struggle with those same issues today, right?
We do.
The obsession with celebrity,
Yeah.
the focus on physical beauty and athletic achievement.
Uh-huh.
He'd probably roll his eyes at our multi-million-dollar athlete contracts.
He probably would.
Yeah.
Xenophanes argued that intellectual and moral excellence were far more important than physical strength
Right.
or athletic ability.
Mm.
He valued wisdom, knowledge,
Right.
and ethical behavior above all else.
Which, when you think about it, makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Brawn fades, beauty is fleeting,
Mm-hmm.
but knowledge and ideas have the power to endure.
Yes.
They shape who we are, how we
Yeah.
understand the world,
Right.
and how we treat each other.
Precisely. And this emphasis on intellectual and moral virtue is a recurring theme in Xenophanes' work.
Okay.
He also criticized the pursuit of wealth and luxury,
Mm.
arguing that a simple, virtuous life was the path to true happiness. He wasn't impressed by fancy clothes, lavish feasts, or
Right.
extravagant displays of wealth.
Right.
He believed that true fulfillment came from living a life of moderation, integrity,
Okay.
and intellectual pursuit.
He sounds like he'd be right at home in a philosophy seminar today,
He would.
debating the meaning of life and the pursuit of happiness.
Exactly.
But okay, let's shift gears a bit
Sure.
and talk about Xenophanes' impact.
Okay.
I mean, we've established that he was a revolutionary thinker,
Yes.
but did his ideas actually catch on? Did they influence anyone else?
That's a great question,
Yeah.
and one that scholars have been debating for centuries.
I bet.
It's clear that Xenophanes' ideas had a profound impact,
Oh,
though perhaps not in a direct, easily traceable way.
right.
He wasn't like Socrates or Plato, who had schools of thought named after them.
So no Xenophanes school of philosophy popping up anytime soon.
Not exactly.
Oh.
But his influence can be seen in the works of later philosophers,
Mm.
who grappled with the same fundamental questions
Okay.
about the nature of the divine,
Mhm.
the limits of knowledge,
Right.
and the relationship between humanity and the cosmos.
Give us some examples.
Sure.
Who was picking up what Xenophanes was putting down?
Well, for starters, there's Parmenides,
Okay.
often considered the father of Western metaphysics.
Right.
While Parmenides developed his own unique philosophical system,
Uh-huh.
there are echoes of Xenophanes' critique of anthropomorphism
Okay.
and his emphasis on the unity and immutability of the divine in Parmenides' work.
Hmm.
It's like Xenophanes planted a seed
Okay.
that Parmenides then cultivated in his own way.
Okay, I'm seeing the connection.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see how ideas can ripple through history, influencing thinkers across generations.
It is.
What about other big names? Didn't Plato and Aristotle have something to say about Xenophanes?
Interestingly enough, both Plato and Aristotle acknowledged Xenophanes.
Hmm.
Though their interpretations of his ideas varied, Plato saw him as a precursor to the Eleatic school of philosophy.
The Eleatic school.
Yeah,
Refresh my memory.
sure.
Who are they again?
The Eleatic school was this group of philosophers known for their radical view of reality
Yep.
as an unchanging, eternal being.
Hmm.
They argued that the world of our senses, with all its change and diversity,
Right.
is actually an illusion.
Wow, that's a pretty mind-bending concept. So Plato saw Xenophanes as a forerunner to this radical school of thought.
He did.
Okay.
And Aristotle, on the other hand, focused more on Xenophanes' theological ideas,
Hmm.
seeing him as a forerunner to his own concept of an unmoved mover.
An unmoved mover.
Right.
Another term I need a refresher on.
Aristotle's unmoved mover is this divine being that sets the universe in motion,
Okay.
but doesn't directly intervene in its day-to-day workings.
Right.
It's a concept that tries to reconcile the idea of a divine creator with the apparent order and regularity of the natural world.
So even these philosophical heavyweights were wrestling with Xenophanes' ideas,
Yeah.
trying to fit him into their own systems of thought.
Exactly.
That's pretty impressive for a poet who was also a philosopher, a scientist, and a social critic, all rolled into one.
It is impressive.
I mean, wow.
And it speaks to the enduring power of his ideas.
Right.
Even today, philosophers and theologians are still grappling with the questions Xenophanes raised centuries ago.
Okay, but let's bring this back down to earth for a minute.
Sure.
Why should we, the everyday non-philosophers,
Right.
care about this guy?
Yeah.
What makes Xenophanes relevant to our lives today?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
What's remarkable about Xenophanes is that his ideas,
Okay.
while rooted in the specific context of ancient Greece, have a timeless quality that transcends time and place.
Give us the elevator pitch.
Okay.
Why should we invite Xenophanes into our mental space?
Because in a world awash in information,
Yeah.
where it's harder than ever to separate truth from falsehood,
Right.
Xenophanes reminds us of the importance of critical thinking, questioning assumptions, and being open to new perspectives.
Right.
He shows us that intellectual humility isn't weakness,
Okay.
it's a strength.
Right.
And perhaps most importantly, he reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge,
Yeah.
the desire to understand ourselves and the world around us, is a worthwhile endeavor,
Yeah.
even if we never arrive at absolute certainty.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
like he's saying, keep searching, keep learning, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Right.
Pretty inspiring stuff from a guy who lived over 2,500 years ago.
It is inspiring.
No.
And his emphasis on observation, reason, and the search for naturalistic explanations is more relevant than ever in our scientifically advanced world.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to touch on one more aspect of Xenophanes' thought, his views on knowledge.
Okay.
We mentioned earlier that he was a bit of a skeptic, right?
Right.
Didn't he have some pretty profound things to say about the limits of human understanding?
He did.
Okay.
In fact, Xenophanes is often credited with being one of the earliest proponents of philosophical skepticism. He famously wrote, "The clear and certain truth no man has seen, nor will anyone know it."
Hold on. He's saying that we can never know anything for sure. Isn't that a bit, well, depressing?
Yeah.
If we can't ever know the truth, what's the point of even trying?
That's a valid question,
Yeah.
and one that has troubled philosophers for millennia.
I bet.
But Xenophanes' skepticism isn't necessarily about giving up on the search for knowledge.
Right.
It's more about acknowledging the limits of human perception and understanding.
So it's not that we can't know anything.
Right.
It's just that we need to be aware of the limitations of our knowledge. We can't just assume we have all the answers, especially when it comes to the big questions about the universe and the divine.
Exactly.
Oh, good.
And in fact, Xenophanes didn't completely dismiss the role of observation and inquiry. He saw a place for opinion or conjecture as a valid way of engaging with the world.
So we can still form opinions and make conjectures,
Right.
but we should always be aware that they are just that. Yeah. Opinions and conjectures, not absolute truths.
Precisely. He was urging caution and humility in the face of the vast unknown.
Right.
He recognized that our knowledge is always partial,
Okay.
always subject to revision.
I'm starting to see why Xenophanes is considered such a pivotal figure in the history of philosophy.
Yeah.
He was questioning everything,
Uh-huh.
pushing people to think more critically,
Right.
and laying the groundwork for the scientific and philosophical revolutions that would come centuries later.
He was a true trailblazer. And while much of Xenophanes' work exists only in fragments,
Right.
those fragments offer us a tantalizing glimpse
Yeah.
into the mind of a man who was willing to challenge the status quo
Right.
and explore the boundaries of human knowledge.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From Xenophanes' critiques of the gods to his unconventional scientific theories to his thought-provoking ideas about knowledge and society.
Yes,
But there's still more to uncover.
indeed.
Yeah.
In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore Xenophanes' legacy and how his ideas continue to resonate with us today,
Right.
especially in an age of information overload and competing truths.
Welcome back to our exploration of Xenophanes. We've been talking about this ancient Greek thinker's critiques of the gods, his fascinating, if sometimes unconventional, scientific ideas, and his thought-provoking views on knowledge and society.
Yeah,
But we kind of left off on a bit of a cliffhanger.
we did.
We were just getting into Xenophanes' legacy, how his ideas still resonate with us today.
Right, even after more than 2,500 years.
Exactly. It's one thing to say he was a brilliant mind for his time, but what makes Xenophanes relevant to us now? What can we learn from this ancient philosopher, poet, scientist in the 21st century?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? And I think there are a few key takeaways from Xenophanes' work that are incredibly relevant to the modern world.
Okay.
First and foremost is his emphasis on critical thinking.
Right.
Xenophanes wasn't afraid to question the accepted wisdom of his time, even when it came to, like, deeply held religious beliefs.
Right.
He challenged people to think for themselves, to
Yeah.
look beyond the myths and traditions that had been passed down for generations.
That's so important, especially in our age of information overload.
It is.
We're bombarded with messages, opinions, and facts from all directions.
Right.
It's more important than ever to be able to, like, critically evaluate information,
Absolutely.
separate truth from falsehood, and form our own informed opinions.
Yeah.
Xenophanes reminds us that intellectual independence is, like, essential for navigating a complex world.
Exactly. And it's not just about questioning external authorities.
Right.
Xenophanes also encourages us to question our own assumptions.
Mm.
He recognized that our perceptions are limited. Our understanding of the world is always partial and incomplete.
Okay.
He urged us to cultivate intellectual humility, to recognize that we don't have all the answers,
Right.
and to be open to new perspectives.
So it's not about rejecting all knowledge or becoming, like, cynical.
Right.
It's about recognizing that knowledge is a process,
Yes.
an ongoing journey of exploration and discovery.
Exactly.
We should always be willing to revise our beliefs
Uh-huh.
in light of new evidence or better arguments.
Precisely. And this ties into another key aspect of Xenophanes' legacy.
Okay.
His embrace of uncertainty.
Right.
He famously wrote, "The clear and certain truth no man has seen, nor will anyone know it."
Right.
This statement, I mean, it could be interpreted as a counsel of despair,
It sounds a little bleak.
but I think it's actually a call to intellectual honesty.
Okay.
Xenophanes recognizes that the universe is a vast and mysterious place,
Uh-huh.
and our human minds can only grasp a small fraction of its complexity.
So it's like he's saying it's okay to not have all the answers.
Yeah.
In fact, embracing that uncertainty, that not knowing,
Right.
can be a powerful motivator for further exploration and discovery.
It can.
It's the fuel that drives scientific progress, philosophical inquiry, and even artistic creativity.
I completely agree. And this brings us to another important aspect of Xenophanes' relevance today.
Okay.
His commitment to naturalism.
Right?
He sought to explain the world in terms of natural processes
Okay.
rather than resorting to supernatural explanations. He saw the universe as this dynamic, interconnected system governed by laws that could be understood through observation and reason.
It's amazing to think that he was developing these ideas centuries before the scientific revolution really took hold.
I know, it's remarkable.
He was laying the groundwork for a way of understanding the world
Uh-huh.
that has shaped our modern society in such profound ways.
He was, and his emphasis on naturalism has implications not just for science, but also for ethics and morality. If we see ourselves as part of the natural world,
Yeah.
subject to the same laws and processes as everything else,
Right.
then we have a responsibility to act in ways that are consistent with the well-being of the whole.
So it's not just about understanding the world, it's about living in it responsibly.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness with all things and acting in a way that promotes harmony and balance.
Exactly. And that's a message that really resonates in the 21st century.
Yeah.
You know, as we face challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, and social inequality,
Right.
Xenophanes reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but rather a part of it.
Right.
Our actions have consequences, and we must choose wisely if we want to create a just and sustainable future.
It's incredible to think that the ideas of this ancient Greek thinker who lived in a world so different from our own can still speak to us so powerfully today.
I agree.
It's like a testament to the enduring power of human curiosity,
Yeah.
the drive to understand ourselves and the world around us, and the search for meaning and purpose in a universe that often seems indifferent to our existence.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Xenophanes' legacy is a reminder that the quest for knowledge is a timeless endeavor. His ideas continue to challenge us, provoke us to think differently, and inspire us to live more thoughtfully and ethically in a world that desperately needs our wisdom and compassion.
Well, dear listeners, that brings our deep dive into the world of Xenophanes to a close. I hope you enjoyed this journey back to ancient Greece and discovered something new and insightful about this remarkable thinker.
Yeah.
Remember to keep questioning, keep exploring.
Absolutely.
Never stop searching for truth, beauty, and wisdom wherever you may find it.